Hello, my name is Scott from the Economics Tutoring Center, and today I'm going to be going through some examples of demand shifters. So please make sure to check my notation and language use with your professor because it may vary. Okay, so we're going to start out with this first example here. It says, assume the economy falls into a recession and people's income decreases. What can we predict given the good is a normal product, ceteris paribus? So ceteris paribus, first of all, just means that nothing else changes. It means all else remains constant. And then we might ask, what does it mean for a good to be a normal product? And that means if your income increases, then you demand more of that good. And similarly, if your income decreases, you demand less of that good. That's what it means to be a normal good. So then, in our example, it tells us income decreases, and we know that since it's a normal good, that means that demand decreases. So I always draw shifts in the curves as going to the left or right. So if demand decreases, that's a shift to the left. And then we have our new quantity right here, quantity 2, our new price here. So you can see that both the quantity and the price are lower than they were in equilibrium after this shift happens. Here's another example. It says, assume tastes for the Roku TV increases. What can we predict will happen to supply or demand for the Roku TV? So in general, tastes and preferences affect demand. So this is saying that tastes increase. It basically just means people like the Roku TV more, or they find out something new about it that makes them want to buy more of it. So you can imagine that that will make demand increase, so that's a shift to the right. So we have a new demand curve, and that gives us a new equilibrium with a higher quantity and also a higher price. Our third example is sort of like the first one. It says, again, assume the economy falls into a recession and people's income decreases, just like before. But now we want to predict what will happen to inferior goods. And, well, what does that mean? What's an inferior good? It's the sort of the opposite of a normal good. It means if your income increases, then your demand for an inferior good actually decreases. And the opposite is also true. If your income decreases, your demand for that good increases. So an example might be like ramen, for example. You only buy it if you have to. So if your income goes up, you might demand less ramen because you can afford something better. So let's see. It tells us that our income decreases, so we know if income decreases for inferior goods, demand goes up. So we have this new demand curve, demand shifts to the right, new equilibrium with a higher quantity and a higher price. And you may start to notice a pattern here. Whenever demand goes up, price and quantity both go up as well. And then if you look back at example 1 where demand went down, price and quantity both went down. So that's a general rule that is always true for shifts in demand. Here's a fourth example. If the price of hot dogs were to decrease, what would happen to the demand or supply of hot dog buns, assuming that the two goods, hot dogs and hot dog buns, are complements, meaning you consume them together. So you can almost imagine these two goods as a bundle because people usually consume them together. So if the price of hot dogs goes down, it decreases, then it's sort of cheaper altogether to consume hot dogs and hot dog buns. And if something is less expensive, usually you demand a higher quantity. So that tells us that because these are complements and now it's less expensive, the demand for hot dog buns will go up. So here's our new demand curve. And again, new equilibrium with higher quantity and a higher price. And then our fifth and final example, we have if the price of Coke were to increase, what can we predict will happen to Pepsi? But this time we say Pepsi is a substitute product. And what that means is Pepsi and Coke are substitute products. You usually consume one or the other because they're so similar. If you're not consuming Coke, you might consume Pepsi instead. So basically we know that the price of Coke increases, and you can sort of imagine that if Coke is more expensive, you might want to switch from Coke to Pepsi. And remember, it's ceteris paribus, all else constant, so we assume the price of Pepsi is the same as it was before. So the price of Coke goes up, and as a result, the demand for Pepsi goes up, because now Pepsi is relatively less expensive. So again, we have a new demand curve. Demand for Pepsi goes up, and you can write this as the market for Pepsi. Just to make it clear, we're not talking about Coke. And again, higher equilibrium quantity after the shift, and higher equilibrium price. So those are a few examples of demand shifters in the economy and how it affects equilibrium. I hope it helped, and if you have any further questions, please ask your instructor or come into the tutoring center.